The desert has a way of waking a man slowly. The first touch of sunlight paints the mesas in fire, the morning wind carries the scent of sage, and the world stirs with a quiet rhythm older than memory. On one such morning, Daniel McGraw, a rancher hardened by years of solitude, rose from his cot expecting nothing more than another day of tending cattle and mending fences. He stretched his arms, shook the sleep from his eyes, and stepped onto the porch of his modest homestead. But what awaited him that morning was not another lonely sunrise, it was a sight that would forever change the course of his life. Standing in the soft glow of dawn was a young woman. Her figure was tall, graceful, dressed in the patterns of her Apache people, with long dark hair spilling down her back. She stood still, proud yet calm, her gaze steady on him. In her arms she carried a woven blanket, its colors alive with meaning he did not yet understand. Daniel's heart skipped. He was used to silence in the mornings, the only company being the cry of hawks or the lowing of his cattle. But here was someone unexpected, someone who didn't belong to the pattern of his daily life. He tipped his hat, cautious, his voice low so as not to startle her. "Ma'am, can I help you?" Her eyes never wavered. She spoke slowly, her words touched by the rhythm of a tongue not her first. "You saved my father. I am Naya. He sent me, to be your wife." Daniel blinked, stunned. For a moment, he thought perhaps he had misheard. He had expected maybe thanks, or a token of gratitude, but never this. He stammered, "Your wife. Miss, I." Naya lifted her chin, silencing him with the quiet strength in her voice. "Among my people, life is the greatest gift. You gave it back to him. He gives me to you, so that your home will no longer be empty." And in that instant, memory flooded Daniel's mind. Weeks earlier, finding a man collapsed near the river, bleeding, his breath shallow. An Apache warrior. Some would have turned away, fearful of the old conflicts between settlers and tribes. But Daniel had carried him home, nursed him through fever, and given him water and food until strength returned. The man had left before dawn, saying nothing, vanishing into the desert's embrace. Daniel had thought no more of it. He hadn't expected gratitude, helping was simply the right thing. And now, that single act of compassion stood before him in the form of this woman, beautiful, strong, unyielding. At first, Daniel didn't know what to do. Neighbors who saw her at the ranch whispered and stared. Some muttered suspicions, others mocked quietly at the saloon. "The rancher's taken an Apache bride," they said. "Reckon he's lost his mind." But Daniel noticed what they did not. Naya worked the land beside him without complaint. She calmed the horses with a touch, sang soft songs in the evenings that made the air inside his cabin feel less hollow. There was a strength in her silence, a dignity that even the desert seemed to respect. And yet, he wrestled with doubt. He worried she felt bound by duty rather than choice. He worried she longed for her people, for the freedom of the hills. Nights he lay awake, staring at the rafters, asking himself if he had trapped her in a life she did not want. The answer came one evening as the sun sank into the horizon, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold. He found her by the corral, seated on a log, weaving patterns into the blanket she had carried the day she arrived. He sat beside her, his rough hands restless. "Naya," he said, his voice thick, "I didn't save your father expecting this. You don't owe me your life, or your freedom." She looked at him, her gaze steady, her voice firm but tender. "You do not understand. My father sent me, yes. But I chose to stay. I saw in you a man who gave without asking. That is rare. That is why I am here." Her words struck him like the breaking of dawn. This was no chain of obligation, it was a bridge. She had chosen. From that day forward, Daniel's heart shifted. He no longer saw her as a reward he hadn't asked for, but as a partner sent by fate. They worked the ranch together, their laughter growing easier, their silences comfortable. She taught him the ways of the desert, the herbs that healed wounds, the signs of rain in the air, the hidden water where the earth seemed dry. In return, he taught her to ride the western saddle, to brand calves, to rope stray cattle from the brush. Side by side, they built a life neither could have imagined alone. But life on the frontier was never without test. One season, a storm unlike any Daniel had seen rolled over the plains. The river swelled, fierce and angry, threatening to sweep away his herd. Neighbors scrambled, fear painting their faces. Daniel and Naya worked without pause, driving the cattle to higher ground, their bodies pushed to exhaustion. At one point, a calf stumbled near the current, bleeding in terror. Without hesitation, Naya plunged into the rushing water, her braid whipping behind her. Daniel's chest seized with fear, but he saw her grip the calf, fighting the current with all her strength. He leapt in, together they wrestled the animal free, guiding it back to safety. At dawn, soaked and weary, they stood side by side watching the herd safe upon the ridge. Neighbors who had once whispered now looked on with respect. They saw not just a rancher and an Apache woman, they saw two souls bound by courage, by trust, by love. Months turned into seasons, and the ranch began to thrive in ways Daniel had never dreamed. But more than that, his life began to thrive. The man once called brave, for his resilience now understood that true bravery was not just facing hardship alone, but opening one's heart to love, even when it came unexpectedly. One night, as they sat on the porch, the stars blazing above them, Daniel turned to Naya, his voice rough with unspoken emotion. "I reckon I thought I was saving your father that night. But truth is, I think it was me who was saved." Naya leaned her head against his shoulder, her words soft as the night wind. "Kindness is never lost, Daniel. It always finds its way back home." And in that moment, Daniel understood. The greatest rewards in life are never asked for, never bargained for, they are given freely, born from simple acts of compassion. The brave rancher who once awoke to silence now woke each day to laughter, to the warmth of love beside him, to a life richer than he ever believed he deserved. What began as a single act of selflessness had blossomed into a love that bridged two worlds, healed old wounds, and gave him something he thought he'd lost forever: hope. Because sometimes, the desert doesn't just test a man, it blesses him, in ways he never expects.